Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is good to see you. Today is Wednesday. It is the 6th of August. We're getting ready for Parshas V'eschanan, otherwise known as Shabbos Nachamu. And let me start by saying it is good to be back. We missed you the last couple of weeks. Layla and I, as you know, we were away. We had the opportunity to visit my parents and our family in Israel. It was a wonderful, wonderful trip. And it did entail a little bit extra traveling because tickets had to be a little bit altered because of the situation. So it did involve a little bit extra traveling. So I apologize for 3 weeks. I believe it was 3 weeks in a row that we weren't able to meet, but it all worked out, and I hope everyone had an enjoyable past couple of weeks, and it was meaningful. And I'm here to tell you we had a wonderful visit with our parents and our family in Israel. So thank you for that opportunity. I want to share with you some sources today on Parshas Ve'eschanan. Otherwise, now here's some more sheets. Otherwise known as Shabbos Nachamu. We're going to look at three sources today that I hope will make this parsha and make this Shabbos a bit more meaningful for us. So let's start off towards the beginning of the parsha. Towards the beginning of the parsha V'eschanan, we're going to see that Moshe Rabbeinu cautions the Jewish people about some things they want to avoid about when they enter into the land of Israel. And as ironic as it seems, the land of Israel was steeped in idolatry. It seems to have been, I've seen people explain this. Shlomo HaMelech tells us in Kohelas, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with a yin-yang. Wherever there's a pull in one direction, in order to have bechira, in order that we have real free will, there's got to be just as strong as of a pull in the other direction. So in a place where there is such a pull towards kedusha, towards sanctity, towards holiness, there's got to be a pull in the other direction towards paganism and towards ungodliness. And that would explain why the land of Israel, where there is such a pull towards spirituality and to being in harmony with God, there was this ironic pull in the other direction. And you see that this plagued our people throughout Tanakh, that they're constantly, the Nevi'im are coming to them and telling them, stay away from Avodah Zarah. The Canaanites who lived there, they were steeped in Avodah Zarah. This was what they were all about. And it's not just imaginary words of the Nevi'im. One thing I'll report to you is that Layla and I, while we were in Israel the other week, I think it was the past Sunday, so it was the Sunday before Tisha B'Av. So it was a really hot day, and we didn't have anything on our schedule. And friends suggested, so you got to stay indoors because air conditioning. Go to the Israel Museum. There's always beautiful new exhibits at the Israel Museum. So we did. Now, I didn't even think about calling ahead first to make sure that they were going to be open. And it turns out the Israel Museum was closed that Sunday. I don't know if it was for renovations or for just, they had different summer hours. But right across the street from the Israel Museum is the Bible Lands Museum. So we said, okay, great, we'll go to the Bible Lands Museum. And it was fascinating. It would have been more fascinating had we been a little bit prepared to have done some homework about some of the things we were going to see, because you could have seen everything and say, okay, here's what Tanakh has to say about this. Now we're looking at something that represents that. And for example, there was a lot of Avodah Zarah there. There was a lot of, they have remnants of idolatry. And the Nevi'im weren't kidding when they were saying that Israel was steeped in idolatry. Some of the kings of Israel did their best to introduce idolatry at the time that the first base of Mikdash was standing. You have King Menashe, and then who introduced it. At the end of his life, he tried to repair that, but it was too late. Yoshio Melech, he did his best to uproot all this Avodah Zarah. This isn't something that there's evidence of it because they have all these smashed figurines and small. They almost look like action figures, but these were the representatives of these various deities that people that either the ancient Canaanites were worshiping or stuff that made its way in from foreign cultures that Jews at the time couldn't get enough of either. Again, it's so hard for us to understand that pull towards this because our Yetzer Hara for that form of Avodah Zarah is just not there nowadays. We may have pulls in other directions for other Avodah Zarah, but in terms of the idea of just idol worship, it's hard for us to relate to. But this was so prevalent, and that's the way I've seen people explain this. Why was it so strong in Israel? Was again the only way you could have real bechira, real choice, and free will is if it's an even choice. And it can only be even choice if there's such a pull towards ruchnius, towards spirituality. There has to be something pulling us another direction as well. I'll just conclude this little preface by saying one last thing. I heard years ago from Rabbi Yisrael Reisman in Brooklyn during a Navi Shir that he said, I don't remember the source he quoted, that he says, this is why precisely if you look at what point in Jewish history we lose Nevuah, we lose prophecy, it was at the time that the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, at the return of the second base of Mikdash, where they prayed to God, take away the Yetzer Hara, take away the urge that we have for idolatry. So it's precisely at that point where we lose nevuah. It's gone because if avodah zarah is gone, the urge to avodah zarah gone, and we still have nevuah, there wouldn't be free will anymore. It would be overwhelming that we'd be pulled in their direction to all do the right thing. So God says, "Okay, have it your way. You want me to take away the urge for avodah zarah, but there has to be an even playing field. If that's going to go away, we have to lose nevuah at that same time too." Fascinating, but it makes sense with this yin yang idea that there has to be, in order for it to really be free will, there has to be pulls in every direction. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So that's why you'll find in Sefer Devarim so many exhortations from Moshe Rabbeinu to the Jewish people before they enter into the land of Israel, saying, "Don't get caught up in this. The land is steeped in this," which again is shocking. Like, why is God bringing us to such a place? Again, because it's also steeped in such a strong pull towards spirituality and towards godliness. The only way that there could still be free will is if there's also pulls in the other direction. So here's a pasuk that indicates that Moshe is telling the Jewish people, don't get caught up with different forms of worship. He says in Yud Tes, so it's chapter 4, verse 19, Parak Daled, pasuk Yud Tes, Upentisa einecha hashemayma, lest you lift up your eyes to the heaven, V'reisas hashemesh ves hayareach, and you'll gaze upon the sun and the moon, Vesa kochavim, and all the stars, the constellations, Kol tzava shemayim, v'nidachta v'ishtachavisa v'vadatam. And you're going to see all this, and don't start being pushed towards this, to bow down to it and to worship this. Asher chalak Hashem Elokecha osam l'chol ha'amim tachas kol hashemayim. That God has assigned all the other nations of the world, yes, the stars, the constellation, they might have some influence over their lives and their destinies, but not you. You are the Am HaNivchar, the chosen nation. We're directly under the auspices of God. We don't have any reason to feel swayed by the sun, the moon, the constellation, the stars. That's not for us, Ein Mazel Yisrael. So don't get caught up in that. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is cautioning the Jewish people, which again, these were prevalent forces that were all being followed and worshipped in Canaan before the Jews show up. Let's look at Rashi. Rashi's going on the words in the pasuk, Asher chalak Hashem Elokecha. So the way we have it translated, and what I found online, is, what does it mean, Asher chalak Hashem Elokecha? The sun, the moon, the stars, the constellation, that's all stuff that God assigned to the other people of the world, meaning there's an idea that their destinies could be influenced by the mazalos, by the constellations, by the stars, but not you, not the Jewish people. That's the plain reading. So let's see Rashi. Rashi says, Asher chalak Hashem, which the Lord assigned, laha'ir lahem, to illuminate for them, for all peoples, meaning either it can mean in its literal sense, yeah, they've got a very functional job. They're either supposed to light up during the day, that's the sun, and the moon and the stars, they'll help us at night. That's the literal reading. A more midrashic reading could be is that, yeah, they might have some influence over the destinies of other people, but not over us. He says, Davar Acher, another explanation, Le'elohus, God assigned them as deities, meaning, Lo mina'an militos acharein. God did not prevent the other nations of the world from erring after them and beginning to worship them. Not only did he not prevent them, Ela hechlikam. He actually, like lahachlik means to slip, like chalak means smooth, something's really smooth. So he says, Ela hechlikam. God almost pushed them. God almost, so to say, set them, down, tricked them to start worshiping all this junk. B'divrei havleim, with all of this nonsense, l'tardan min olam. And this was all in an effort to drive them out of this world. In other words, that they should cause all these sins and by straying after all these false deities. This was all a plan of God. He, so to say, almost influenced them in that direction. B'chinu omer, and you see a reference to this in Tehillim, ki hechlike elav be'enav, God smoothed the way for him in his eyes, limso avono limso, to find his iniquity, to hate him, and that's what Gemara and Avodah Zarah. So it seems. Good question. So Abby is bothered by, well, it sounds like from this Gemara, it sounds like it already happened. So it sounds like from this Gemara that it already happened. Asher hachlik means Davar Acher was Lo manan litos. God did not prevent them from goofing achrem, ela hechlikam. He caused them to slip. It seems like there was some point in history where God almost set the nations of the world up to slip, that they should get caught up with Avodah Zarah, and all as a way of making that there's so much against them that now they get spat out of the land of Israel. The question is, when did that happen? In other words, it almost seems as if there was some part that like God played a role in them making this bad decision.
We say in the morning, like the Kani, the Freezy, Girgush, all of the ones that we say in the morning. So they're not in the world anymore.
No, they're gone.
They haven't conquered the land.
Correct. But it sounds like by the time the Jews were coming in, God, and repeatedly in Sefer Devarim and earlier points in the Torah as well, God says, I'm going to spit out all those native tribes because they've all sinned and corrupted everything, and they got totally caught up in idol worship. Sounds like Moshe Rabbeinu keeps telling Jewish people, they're not all getting spit out because of your zechusim. They're getting spit out because of all of their terrible. Don't. Correct. And he's saying, don't make the same mistakes. This Rashi quoted a Gemara that says, at some point, God almost played a role in the process, almost tricking them to sin, to start following the sun, the stars, the constellations. And the question is, when? When did that happen? And that's what's bothering this Meshech Chachma. This Meshech Chachma that we're going to see on the bottom is, can you point a finger? Is there anywhere in the Torah until this point that seems to indicate that something may have happened which could have caused the natives of the land of Israel to have made this horrible mistake that they ought to be worshiping the sun, the stars, the moon, or something of that nature? Because Rashi's quoting this Gemara that clearly is alluding to this. Hechlikam, God caused them to slip. Where did God cause them to slip? So let's see this Meshech Chachma. So the Meshech Chachma writes as follows. He says, Hinebe Gemara, he's quoting that Gemara in Avodah Zarah that Rashi quoted. Hinebe Gemara, the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, Darshu Asher Chalak Hashem. What does it mean that God set up for them? Shehechlikan b'dvarim, that he almost caused them to slip in matters that God did. God caused them to err. Kidei tardan mina olam, in order to chase them out of the world, so they would lose their foothold, lose their right to be in the land of Israel. V'habeirhu. So now the Meshech Chachma says, how do we explain this? Where do we find anywhere in Tanakh that God did this? So he says, Habeirhu da'amru. If you look in Parshas Re'eh says, I'm sorry, the Amru, it says, it's not Re'eh, it says Re'eh Tana Debei Elio. He's telling you, look in that Medrash, Tana Debei Elio. The Avraham Isponein, Avraham was curious when God, when Avram was a very young man and he discovers God on his own. The Avram Isponein, Avram was curious and he began to be very inquisitive. Why is it that day in and day out, I notice the sun rises in the east and sets in the west? Why does it never go the other direction? In Elohimhu, if the sun really is a deity, as the locals around me in Ur-Kasdim in ancient Babylonia, as if they're Chaldeans, as they're claiming that the sun is their deity and they worship it, why doesn't he ever change his mind and say, today I'm going to go a different direction? That was one thing that was really bothering Abraham. The Al Karchach, so he says, what do you have to say? It must be the sun's not independent. It must be the sun's just a puppet, and the sun is following someone else's rules. The Al Karchach shehu mukrach. It must be the only way to explain how day in day out I'm tracking it. I'm watching what's going on. The sun never deviates. It must be there's an orchestrator. It must be there's a grand orchestrator. There's a creator who has set rules, laws of nature in motion. And the sun is compelled to follow them. K'moshe Be'arti. And I've explained that. So this is the Meshech Chachma saying this is something very famous that the Medrash teaches about Avraham Avinu. This is one of the ideas that when he contemplated the world around him, what led him to come to the realization that there's a creator. V'nimtza. So what does it come out from that Medrash? The hatidirus, the fact that there is a set order, laws of nature that are followed day in and day out for millennia. This is what we say in Kiddush Levana once a month. We say God set an order for all the sun, the moon, the constellations, that they follow their order, they follow their script, and they don't deviate. This proves shesamim la'asos ritzon kanam, the sasim lasos ritzon chanam, that they delight in fulfilling the will of the Creator. That's what we say in Kiddush Lavana. The very fact that there is such grand order in the cosmos, in the laws of nature, and there's no deviation, that shows that there's obviously an orchestrator. This is one of the conclusions that Avram made. Paul, and this is again, he's quoting from Kiddush Lavana, Paul MS, there is a true worker, shepu'ula so MS, that all of his craftsmanship is truth. Bilti nishtanes v'hinitzchas. It never deviates and it's eternal. So this was one of the points that helped Avram come to the realization that there's an orchestrator, there's a creator. These are not independent entities, and they're not worth being worshipped on their own. That's what the Medrash tells us. This wasn't limited just to the sun. This applied to all the constellations, the planets. Shomrim es mishtaram. They all keep to their missions. They keep to their guards. V'notrim tafkidam. And they do exactly what they were tasked to do. This was a huge part in Avraham coming to the conclusion in a world of paganism, in a world of polytheism. This was a world that said, no, there's one entity, there's a creator, and he has set all the forces in motion. That's what the Medrash teaches us. Next paragraph. The Chasher Amar Hashem LaMoshe. However, earlier in Sefer Devarim, God tells Moshe, Hayom, here's a quote, Hayom hazeh, this day, Achel teis pachtecha v'yirascha al panei, this is the day that I will now put the fear, people, the nations of Canaan, and all the nations you're marching through will have fear of you under all the heavens. That's what we found earlier in Devarim. What happened that day? What was the Hayom hazeh? That was the day when the Jewish people went to war. Remember when the 2.5 tribes, they take all that land on the east side of the Jordan? What happened there was Sichon and Og had gone to war against, because they just said, we want to pass through your land. And they said, not only will you not pass through, we're coming out to fight you. And they came out and the Jews beat them and were victorious and took all their land and all of their cattle. But the Gemara tells us what happened on that day. The Jews were given a miracle to help them win, that the sun stood still, meaning they had as much time as they needed to wage that war. It didn't set. The sun stayed in the sky. It hung longer than it was supposed to. So the Meshech Chachma wants to point a finger. That's the moment. He says, Im kain, nischazek ta'usan shel ovdei hashemesh lemor. That now all of a sudden empowered anyone out there who was a sun worshiper, said, we finally saw it. Avram, his whole life, he spent time tracking the sun, and it always rose in the east and set in the west, always kept to its schedule. But we just saw something abnormal. We saw the sun did something that it's not supposed to do. It stayed in the sky far longer than it's supposed to. The day was much longer on those days that they went to war against Sichon and Og. What does that show? Who must be the boss? There must be an independent entity out there. And what is it? The sun. That's what he says. Any of the pagans out there who worship the sun, now they got chizuk. Now that they found strength to their erroneous beliefs. Lemor, halohu b'tiri ubal ratzon. The sun must be independent and must have its own will. Ukishiratza, whenever the sun wants, the sun could get up and go. All these years, we thought the sun was a puppet, was just acting on its directives that a creator that Avram Avinu had taught the world about. It's wrong. It's all been disproven. So here it is, this miracle that Hashem had made for the Jewish people to help them. What did these pagans choose to see? They didn't choose to look at it and say, let's just finish it. I think this is a wild idea. Let's just finish what the Meshech Chachma says. L'chein amar Moshe. That's why Moshe says now in this pasuk, Asher chalak Hashem elokecha l'chol amim tachas kol hashemayim. That God, again, the plain reading was God has set up the stars, the sun, the moon for all the other nations. But how did the Gemara learn it? Hechalikam. He caused them to err. He caused them to stumble. Shebishvil shu Hashem elokecha. Because God is your God. V'ratzah lefarsem shimcha gdulascha. He wants to make your name so renowned and let the world know how much He loves you and how great the Jewish people are. V'amid lecha shemesh. That's why He held the sun in its place that day, so you could be victorious against those two mighty, mighty kingdoms of Sichon and Og. Nasan makom lovdei hashemesh litos. In that very moment where He was letting the world know how much He loves you and how much He's in charge, that caused erroneous pagans to stumble and to say that must be that the sun is really independent. Now, again, if we were doing some kind of analysis of this. Let's say we were totally objective, being totally objective. You say, okay, the world is now X thousands of years old, since, who knows how old it is since creation, but X thousands of years old since Adam Arishon, right? That's what we'll say. So we'll say now the Jews are entering the land. Avraham, we say, was what? Avraham, I think we said, was 1948 from Adam Arishon. So here we are hundreds of years later. So you're good, at least 500 years later, something of that nature. I think they say it was 2448 when they came into the land of Israel. Is that what it is?
2448 is
Matan Torah. Okay, so here we are 50 years later. So it's about 2500. Okay, so let's say it's 25. So here you are, you want to, let's say you're one of these pagan natives who wants to worship the sun. Let's do an objective analysis. It's been 2500 years since Adam Harishon. The sun has followed its orders this whole time. We all know there's been and that's led Avraham to successfully teach the world and preach to the world that there must be an orchestrator, there must be a creator, and he's made a pretty good case of that. We all know 50 years ago, because Shamo Amin Yirkazun, everyone heard about it. It was in all the newspapers, all the reports about the Makos that were in Mitzrayim, about how God manipulated the forces of nature. He destroyed the most powerful empire in the world at that time. The splitting of the sea, we all heard about it. The reports have come out there. Everything is out there. The Jews have just lasted for 40 years in the wilderness where nobody should have survived. And all the evidence has come in. Reports have come back about Man. Reports have come back about this miraculous well. In fact, when they even put up the offers to Sichon and Og that will pass through your land, they even told them, we'll buy water, we'll buy food. We didn't need it all these years because we've got our own, but we'll buy from you because we want to, be on the up and up with you. All these reports are out there. There are reports out there about nations of the world. If they wanted to taste the man, the closest they could get, it would melt every day, go into those streams. The animals, the gazelles in the wilderness would drink it. If they shechted those animals, they knew that, wow, those tasted out of this world. The reports are out there about what's going on, that there's this people that's living. And they just beat these two mighty, mighty kingdoms, Sichon and Og, who have been the guardians. They were the ones who were supposed to be, they had been hired to be the blockers. All the Canaanite nations had hired Sichon and Og to be the blockers. If anyone's going to ever come in from the east to try to cross the Jordan and to attack Canaan, you guys, we're paying you. You are the vanguard. You're going to stop everyone. Miraculously, the Jewish people just smote them. This desert people have been in there for 40 years, not trained in combat. Look what they just pulled off. And the sun held in place for an extra long period of time to help them. Now, let's analyze this. How do we explain all this? I think the track record would seem to show the sun really is subservient. There is a creator. Take into account all the reports for 40 years ago about the Exodus, everything that happened to Egypt, how that world power is vanquished, and how they just survived for 40 years in the wilderness, and now the sun stood in place. I'd say that's just more along the same line, that their God loves them and is controlling the forces of nature to help them out. Yet, what happened here? According to the Meshech Chochmah is explaining the Gemara, they took that same thing and they said, "Oh, the sun is in charge." I think, Simon and Garfunkel said it really well. A man sees what he wants to see and disregards the rest. I think they said a man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. But I don't remember if it was see or hear. I don't remember.
The marble. The marble comes once every 1,640 years.
And that's a one-time event that they made that stooge mistake in Tower of Babel. But here it is now. Now it is, that they're and kind of after Yetzias Mitzrayim, after everything that's gone on, I would have imagined that one event of the sun standing still, all that would have done was been mischazek, that would have strengthened everyone's belief in how much God is controlling the world, controlling the forces of nature, and is on the side of the Jews. Yet, if someone is desperate to cling on to whatever erroneous belief they have, don't confuse me with the facts. Don't confuse me with the facts. Don't confuse me with the data. Exactly. And I think we see this all around us. Sometimes we're just pulling our head out. How are people just not seeing the logic? The answer is, if you don't want to see the logic, no matter how compelling it is, you're not going to see it. And here you have Ovdei Avodah Zarah. You'd rather not see the logic, because to acknowledge that there's an orchestrator, there's a creator, now there's responsibilities. I mean, I'd rather live in a world of chaos, of polytheism, of pantheons and all that. I'd much rather do that. If I want to do what I want to do and just, not have any constraints on my life, I'd much rather have it explained that way than to say I've got to subdue myself to a will of a creator. That's a very hard ask.
And you're poor and like that makes sense, but today it's educated, highly educated.
Okay, but but then ask yourself, what's the options? What's the options? And so the answer is if you've got a really strong pull in another direction, don't confuse me with the facts, ma'am. That's really what it comes down to.
Right, you see this today.
Correct,
In
100%.
higher education,
You-
middle education,
100%.
higher education,
Don't confuse me with the facts. Don't confuse me with common sense. You can have as much common sense and facts, but if someone is really being pulled, in Hebrew, the term that's always used is a negia. If I have a vested interest, of why I want to do A, you can bring all the proofs in the world against it. It's not until I'm willing to take a hard look in the mirror. It's brutal and it can be very hard because then I have to smash down all of my all of the efforts what I've put in until now, whatever vested interest means. I've dug in my heels. Don't confuse me with the facts. And sometimes we think, isn't it just overwhelming? Like just this week, okay, you're seeing reports come out.
The picture of
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah.
of the malnourished who really had it.
Correct, 100%. And now there's more and more news stories about how so many other pictures have been manipulated and set up. But yeah, here's Hamas themselves releasing their own pictures of how they are actually starving hostages and captives and torturing them. And that doesn't create a people because don't confuse me with the facts. And it's maddening. It's maddening. You live in a mad world. And sometimes we make the mistake of thinking if I could just come up with one more fact, that's gonna change our ideas. I think this is a great lesson. This Meshech Chachma, who he's explaining this Gemara that Rashi quotes, this just explains this how strong vested interests are. When vested interests are strong, it takes a lot of gevura, it takes a lot of strength, it takes a lot of integrity and honesty to say, I'm really a seeker of the truth. I don't know how many people out there really are seekers of the truth. To really be a seeker of the truth, a person has to be willing to say, whatever I've put my time, energy, and efforts into until now and dug down on, I'm going to have to say I was wrong. That involves swallowing pride and whatever other passions are leading them in that direction. That could be the hardest thing in the world, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. I think this is a great illustration of that. And I think the point you're saying of these pictures, again, this isn't causing the media at large to saying we've been duped, because to say we've been duped, saying we're not as smart as we think we are, and that whole agenda that we've been pushing until now is wrong, we've been duped. That's incredibly difficult for someone to say. So I think this just helps us realize this, because this is the way he's making sense of the Gemara. To me, it's almost astonishing to say that event, this is what caused them to slip. Well, how on earth did they see it that way? And what did an objective observe? The answer is they're not objective. Objective means I don't have a stake in the matter. If I got a stake in the matter, I'm not objective anymore. And once someone's got a dog in the race, it's a lot harder to be objective. And this, I think, just reminds us of that. I don't know, I saw this Meshech Chachma, and then you bring this into line with current events.
There's an incredible beauty in that medrash that says one side sees this as proof that God is on our side, and the other side sees this as proof
of dependence
of it. That is
a force of independence. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was astonishing. And it's specifically at this point, the Jews are on the verge of entering Israel. So, and the world knows about, again, 2,500 years worth of uninterrupted natural order. The world knows about the fact that what Avram had been preaching. The world knows about the fact what happened 40 years ago about the Exodus. They know how they've been surviving the last 40 years, miracles. Just say this is one more miracle. That would be the easiest conclusion to say. But instead, they double down on all that stuff because that's where they want to be. And essentially, where a person wants to be, that's where they're going to let their logic take them. And don't confuse me with the facts. That's where.
You think that Hashem understands human nature and this kind of thing, and that.
Well, he made human nature.
He made us. Right?
But when you say Hashem led them,
this is an example. Correct.
Them.
Right. This was almost like
them in motion.
Right. Now again, they had been worshiping idols this whole time. It's not like they had been innocent Boy Scouts and now all of a sudden Correct. This was like he gave him one last one. What you may have imagined may have been, one last chance to, before the Jews are entering Israel to finally say Hashemu Elokim. This one last thing he gave them, and this is that's hechli come, caused them to slip. That's how the Meshech Chochmah says. This is all I could point a finger at, and I thought it's an astonishing. I think it's a beautiful way to learn this, but it helps us. I think
Explains a lot.
explains the world around us. It helps us say like I'm not losing my mind. I'm not the one who's crazy. Like I'm the one who's being objective. I'm the one who's honestly assessing data. It's people who have a vested interest who are crazy. Yeah.
It's so relevant today.
Yeah.
When I see everything that's happened since October 7th.
Yeah.
To me, it's one miracle after another.
Right.
That Israel has been able to achieve
What it
they've
has.
been able to achieve.
Right.
And that's not how the rest of the world
Right.
sees it.
And
It's not even how Hiloni Jews in Israel see
I
it.
know.
No, it's because we're good, because the IDF is good, because we have great scientists, because there's a rational explanation. There's no rational
Right.
explanation.
But I also look at it for you're 100% right, but I also look at it on the flip side. How could, like, you look at a world gone mad, or did you see this past week how many people were marching in Australia? Demand, like it's like it's a world gone mad. It was a crazy number, some kind of crazy number. Right. Every kind, right. It's just a world gone mad. And then, by the way, I want to tell you one interesting thing. Our trip to Israel now, we stopped in Rome on the way there and on the way back, and we had a very positive experience in this regard. I was very nervous because you keep hearing about Europe.
Yeah.
And so of course I was wearing a baseball cap. But it didn't do any good. Like tons of people come over and we say shalom, shalom. Like, anyone who's got Judah, or any Jew out there recognizes in a second. And our tour guide at the Coliseum, who wasn't Jewish, so it was Layla. Our group was really small. It was just me, Layla, and there was one guy from Manhattan. Ended up being Skylar. He ended up being Jewish too. And right away he just packed us right. But as we say, he wanted to tell us some things that were of Jewish nature. He goes, "You guys are all Jewish, right?" I was like, it's really funny. I know it's just funny how that works. But anyhow, I don't know. I did not see, at least in Rome, I did not see any type of craziness going on. And when we were in the Jewish quarter, the ancient Jewish Roman ghetto there, where the Grand Synagogue is and everything, not only did I not see any graffiti, I saw very public signs about hostages. And one thing I was very interested to notice, I pointed this out to our tour guide by the Great Synagogue there. Their signs of the hostages I thought were very, in a sense, very different. They had a huge school building that's funded by the Lauder Foundation that's doing tremendous work. There was over, he told us, I think, 1,200 kids in this K to 12 massive building. And what they did is it's all under the traditional Orthodox community, but there's different tracks in the school. And there's families who want a greater degree of Limudei Kodesh have one track, but they're all under this one roof. He says, so it wasn't in session, it was on summer break. Now, so we didn't see all the kids, but a huge building. The building, again, even though there was no big sign that said like Jewish school, it was clearly in the Jewish ghetto core. It was in the Jewish thing. And there was all sorts of Israeli flags and hostage signs and bring them home now stuff, in both in Italian and Hebrew and stuff there. And then what I saw by the Great Synagogue was this surprised me was that on the outside, meaning not on the inside of the ghetto where you'd think it was perhaps more safe, but on the outside, on their fencing, because they're doing some renovation work on the building. So there was a lot of posters, full-size posters of hostages, but specifically not the ones who were still being held. Sometimes the one will say kidnapped or the ones that had been returned. And they were saying like, thank God returned. Yeah, I said to the guide, I said, I think that's a beautiful angle, like outside the show, like here it is, they're saying, thank God, rescued, thank God, rescued. There was only, again, they didn't have everyone. There was probably just the latest number, so it was like, whatever the number was, it was like, thank God, returned, thank God, rescued, because some of them were. And I said, that's a beautiful spin on it. In other words, just let it, people coming into show should see a positive message that there has been something. But anyhow, but outside the school, I didn't see any graffiti. And what I did see was a couple of Italian police cars there. And our first reaction was, oh my God, there must have just been an incident. Yet no one was concerned. And the tour guide told us, no, the Italian government pays wherever this is taxpayer dollar. There are, rather than having to hire private security, there is government cars. There was at least two cars. We saw one by the shul and one by like the restaurant row there, in the old ghetto area there, where there was Italian police officers. Everyone was waving, being nice to them. Our tour guide was joking with one of them. One guy had like a really long beard, and I said, like an Italian. I said, "What'd you say?" Everything they say just sounds so jolly in Italian. No, 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 no. He said like, so everything just sounds so jolly. And I saw the police guy start laughing. So I said, "What'd you say?" So he said, "I was joking with him. This guy, his name was Shlomo. He's originally from Toronto. He married a girl from Rome. That's how he ended up. He's raising his kids there." So he was telling us. I said, "What'd you say?" He goes, "I was joking with him because he had just come up on duty. This policeman. He had come on a motorcycle and took off his helmet. He had this big, long, like bushy beard. He said, 'Here you are as a policeman, but you look like a terrorist.'" That's what he told him. But it sounded so jolly. The guy was laughing, giving him a wave, like it's just it's a funny thing. But anyhow, so I asked him. I said, we kept hearing all these reports about how Europe is being overrun by radical Islam and stuff. So he goes, "It's really scary." He goes, "But I'll tell you the truth, that's more in Northern Europe than the Mediterranean area."
France.
Right. So that's what he said. He goes, "You go to France, England," and then he said also like Sweden. He says that all he says, and he said he goes up in like the Netherlands. He says it's also it's terrible. He goes terrible. He goes as far as there's security here, but he says we're not. He goes the Jews in Rome. We're not. He goes I don't know about. I didn't ask him about Northern Italy, but he said that's more Northern Europe. You're not seeing that here in Rome, and that's not. So that was reassuring to hear, but. Again, but you're seeing it's just like a world gone mad, and you're wondering like how are they not picking up the data, the facts that we are? And again, I think I'm not saying this is good, but it just helps us explain it. Is that like again, a person they see what they want to see, they disregard the rest, and when there's vested interests involved, and acknowledging the truth is going to have to cause them to demolish all the errors that they've made and recognize they're not as smart as they think they are, they're not as perceptive as they think, they're not as sharp as astute as they think they are, and some of their whatever they're thinking was wrong. That's just such a big ask, and I think that would help us. I'm not saying be at peace with it, but at least realize that I don't have to pull out more hair because I'm not the one who's crazy. It's we just understand human nature a bit better, and God willing, one day people will come to their senses.
So again, APAC.
Yeah.
Every day. It's a whole
The news brief.
things that's going on.
Yeah.
And so they said, and I assume it's correct. So I mean, my belief is that what APAC is going to write is
Right.
and it's not.
Right.
So they said the United Nations released a report that 78% of all of the aid coming into Gaza has been hijacked.
Yeah. And you know what? From the beginning, do you remember at the beginning? 100%. Right. And no one reports this. No one. Right. But I'm saying, but the media is not picking this up.
Not the report.
Correct. In other words, but Shelley's asking, why don't all the media outlets in the world say, if you want to blame any malnutrition on anyone, blame it on them?
So,
In Nigeria, there's terrible famine. Just children are dying.
Correct.
And they said one of the things they pointed out is
Yeah.
people are joining Boko Haram because that's a way to escape from the famine.
Right.
Because if you're a soldier for them,
You'll get
they'll
fed.
pay. Yeah.
that's the same thing with most of these
Right.
terrorist
Right.
organizations. But in the Torah it tells us what happened in Mitzrayim when the Jews became disgusting, detestable to the Mitzrayim. It was something Hashem caused to happen. Like all of a sudden, the Jews are hated now. And then when they left, it said the Jews found favor
Right.
in their eye. It's like
Right.
it's like all Christians in
Right.
your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, but until
It's-
the Yemos HaMashiach, when people are going to come through, as we say in Aleinu every day,
Yeah.
Ki l'chasich ra kol berach, that finally all knees will bend to God. In other words, until they're finally compelled to do it, they can't escape the truth anymore. People are going to follow these erroneous things, and it's just again, it'll drive us crazy. But at least this helps us at least understand what's to at least make some sense from it. I'm not saying this should help us sleep at night any better, but it means we don't have to keep asking how is the world so crazy. This I think helps us understand it. Now I want to share one more with you. We have two here, but I want to share. Let me share one. I think this is the one that's better. The next one that we have. Okay, the next one here is in the same parak. A little bit later, And this spoke to me because last year in the CYHSB, I was learning with my students Maseches Makos, specifically the chapter that deals with the Ir Miklat. I don't know why. I've always felt like a real connection with everything involving the Ir Miklat. I just find the whole concept fascinating. So I learned this with my students, the chapter that had to do with Ir Miklat, and this was one of the points that came up. Remember, the Ir Miklat is set up that if someone accidentally, I don't know if accident's the right word, unintentionally kills another person. The classic example they always give is they're out chopping wood and the axe head flies off and kills someone. So again, this wasn't negligence. That's not gross negligence. And it's not carelessness. It was completely unintentional. Most people don't before every swing check that their axe head is firmly implied. By the way, it happened somewhere recently. I forgot who I was talking to. He told me he actually had this. He was actually using an axe to chop some wood, and the axe head flew off and went right into the dirt. And he's like, "Oh my God, this is exactly what thank God nobody was around, but this is exactly what the Gemara was talking about." So anyhow, the Gemara, not the Gemara, the Pasuk tells us that in this week's Parsha, we know there's supposed to be the original 6 are going to be set up, 3 on the east side of Jordan and 3 on the west side in Israel proper. So Moshe, we know Moshe, is he allowed to go into the land of Israel? No. But one of the last mitzvahs that Moshe does before passing away, is at least planting the flag for where the 3 ought to be on the east side of the Jordan. So it tells us, Az Yavdil, so it's Pasuk Mem Aleph, Az Yavdil Moshe Shalosh Arim Be'ever Yarden. Then Moshe decided to separate or to designate where the 3 cities of refuge would be on the east side of the Jordan, Mizrach HaShemesh, towards the sunrise, meaning on the east side, Memphis. Lanus Shama, these were intended to be places where someone could flee. Rotzeach asher yirtzachas re'ehu, someone who murdered their friend bivli das, without knowledge, meaning totally unintentionally. V'lo sonelo mitmal shel shom, and we know about this person that they didn't have a track record of. It wasn't like a Hatfield-McCoy relationship. If we knew that these people hated each other, we'd be suspect. How could we really know this was unintentional? Maybe intentionally loosened the accent. And such a person should flee to one of these cities, and that's where he'll live. And then we know the rules are until the Kohen Gadol dies. Rashi here quotes a beautiful Gemara. I learned this with the students. The Gemara says, Rashi says as follows. Ozi Avdil, then Moshe set aside, Nasan Lev Lios Chared LaDavar Sheavdilen. Moshe decided, I'm going to be very cautious. I'm going to hasten to implement this, to designate these cities before he passes. One might argue, Moshe, why are you wasting your time? You've got a limited days left on earth. And why are you designating these now? They can't function as an Ir Miklat until the other 3 are set up, and you can't go there. So just leave written instructions where they ought to be, and now move on. Do tasks that you can accomplish in this world. They're not really going to be able to function because they can't function as an Ir Miklat till the other 3 are set up, and you can't do those. So Moshe, why are you wasting time on this? Amar Moshe, Moshe's attitude was, mitzvah she'efshar l'kaima akaimena. If there's something I could have a part in, even if it's not a full fulfillment of the mitzvah, but if I could have a share in this mitzvah, I want to do it. And I was telling the boys, this is such an important attitude. What the Gemara is teaching us is that oftentimes we think about something really big and exciting we want to get involved in, to help another person, to start a good project. And I might think, well, what's the point? There's so much work, I'm never going to really get it done. But at least get it started. At least do something. It's not an all or nothing attitude. That's what I was trying to drive home from this Gemara. It's not an all or nothing attitude. And we say in Pirkei Avos, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. It's not our job to finish the task. At the same time, Lo ata but I'm not, it's not up to me to just decide, okay, because I can't finish it, I'm not going to get involved at all. I have to do it. Let me get involved in some way, even if it's not a fulfillment. I'm not going to finish it, but just a chance to be involved in a mitzvah, to be involved in a chesed, jump at the opportunity. So if I know even I'm not going to be able to solve this person's problems, but let me at least help with a Band-Aid. So, you know what I mean? Let me do that. That's what we're learning from Moshe Rabbeinu. So I saw that Rav Sternbach in his Tam Vadas, he speaks this out even a little better. He adds another point to it. Let's see what he says. Az Yavdil Moshe Shalosh Arim Be'ever Yarden. We're on the bottom of page 2. So he says, then this is the pasuk he set up, he established, in other words, he planted the flag where those 3 cities would be on the east side. Perish Rashi, he quotes our Rashi. So just to save time, we're not going to read, you see on the 3rd line at the beginning, he ends the quotes. We just read our Rashi. V'nira, so Rav Sternbach writes, shezehu tam l'smichus haparshios. He says it's no accident. I never caught this before. Why specifically the juxtaposition? Why did the Torah put this right here about Moshe setting up or establishing where those three are a mikot should be? Right before this, what did Moshe do? He cautioned the Jewish people lishmor chukei mishpatei Torah, to make sure they observe all the statutes of the Torah. So God will be good to them and their descendants. Shema yomar adam, maybe a person would say, bilvavo, in their heart. How can I possibly keep all the mitzvos? Moshe just told me to keep all the mitzvos. How can I do that? I don't have the ability. I don't have the means. I don't have the education. Whatever, maybe I can't do it. So just throw in the towel. It's all or nothing. He just told me, Moshe just said, be sure to keep all the mitzvos. I can't keep all the mitzvos. I have this challenge. I have that challenge. I have this limitation. It's all or nothing. If I can't do them all, I'm doing nothing. It would come out that Jews would stop, they wouldn't observe mitzvahs, because I've got so many reasons why I can't finish the project. I'm not going to do any mitzvahs. Top of page 3. So he says that's the juxtaposition. It's a beautiful lesson, but he goes, it's even better when you look at the juxtaposition. Right after Moshe admonishes everyone, cautions everyone, be sure to keep the totality of the Torah. That's when he tells you that he established those three. That's why the Torah teaches us now. Learn from Moshe Rabbeinu. Because he loved and he was so consumed with fulfilling the word of God. He set up, I want to establish, I want to plant the flag for those three cities. So I can at least have a hand in fulfilling the mitzvah of the cities of refuge. Even though he full well knew that it won't fully help. They can't function yet. They can't accept anyone who wants to come find shelter there. Nonetheless, as soon as he had the opportunity even to fulfill a piece of a mitzvah, he hastened himself. I don't want to let this opportunity go to waste. This is a lesson for each and every Jew. To do our best. Do the best that we can in fulfilling the mitzvahs and studying Torah. And it's not our job to complete it. If we just focus on, can I complete it? I won't even get started. We can fully rely on our employer, meaning God, that God will give us wages for whatever it is that we're able to do. So even if we're on such a low stature, I can't finish it, I can't complete it, don't hesitate to get involved. And I love it. I think it's a beautiful lesson that I always saw from this Rashi beforehand. And I think it's so important, not just for the students in high school, but for each and every one of us, because we all have an everything or nothing, all or nothing Yetzer Hara in our mind that's trying to talk us down. Remember old Tom and Jerry cartoons when he's got a decision to make, the angel pops up on one shoulder and then the devil on the other? We all have that we all have that all or nothing, everything or nothing Yetzer Hara, and it could kick in. And I always thought this is a beautiful teaching, how to stay away from that and say, no, I'm going to be like Moshe. But what I loved, what Rav Sternbach did, is he added another dimension, because he said, look at the juxtaposition. Right before these psukim is when Moshe admonishes us, be sure to keep the totality of the Torah. So now he knows, the Torah knows that, wow, the all or nothing might kick in. That's why right here we're being taught about Moshe, that Az Yavdil. Right then and there, that's what Moshe went and had to plant the flags for those 3 hours. I love that. I thought that was so beautiful. All right, so we'll pause here. We'll save this for another time, that last one there. But I think these two are excellent, and hopefully this can help us have a better appreciation of our parsha and have a more meaningful Shabbos. All right, thank you everyone for joining. If anyone has anything they'd like to share, please feel free to do so. Oh, you got it. Yes.
Okay. Rabbi, so I have a question. And in the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, it says